Oi. I realized I was kind of stuck. On that occasion. No. Don't say goodbye yet. Come back. Oi. Come back. 没有结束，回来，给我回来。Oi. Hello, what now? This is your hacker Nicole Cyan. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Tsue. Hello, Bubblets. Coding VTuber. There are a lot of coding VTuber. Check them out. Tempest in Magia. Hello, welcome. I don't know Rust though. I don't know much either. But it's gonna be fun. Stay. Hello, Adam. 欢迎 DVD. Hello, Kato. What? PSA for all devs, ping your dependencies to a specific version, not version X or higher. We don't need things like node IPC happening in Rust. Wait, why is that? Why do we say it here? I'm just curious. Did you just encounter some version conflict in your project? Welcome, Kilanas of Horizon. Hello again. Welcome, Keijo. Welcome, Dragon. Welcome, Kato. What is Node IPC incident? I've never heard of it. Hello, Puffer. Welcome. Welcome, super sexy boing boing. Pick up Nikonini Oni-chan. What is Node IPC? Seems like something that I should know. It feels like something that I should know. Also, it's been a while since I streamed. Everything looking okay? Is science still normal? I was feeling a little sick at the beginning of the week, so I kind of postponed the schedule. I was like, do I want to take a break this week? Or do I just go rest for 1 or 2 days and see how it goes? I'm feeling a little better, but I have scheduled a doctor visit next week, so I don't know if I'll be able to stream next week. It also happens that my next week is my anniversary, but given that I'll be visiting doctor and what I have been preparing for the anniversary will not be delivered on time due to a series of unfortunate events, I'll postpone my anniversary. So those will be noticed later. Yup. Node IPC is a package for inter-process communication in JavaScript. Oh, IPC, inter-process communication. The developer introduced an update that ran malware on all Russian and the Belarusian computers. Oh, well, I don't know how to comment on that. Looks like we should really specify your specific version. Speaking of security. Welcome, Mr. Lucas. Welcome, Atom. Hello. I did not know there are so many attacks happening. It's time to start a Cyan hacker group. And the FBI will arrest me in no time. The malware RMRF. Oh gosh. Welcome Understore. You hate npm? Why? You hate Node? Okay. Yes. I've been doing a lot of talking. Today we're learning object-oriented features of Rust. We're doing OOP. OOP. What is OOP? It's a way of modeling programs. Objects came from Simulas in 1960s. Is Simula a programming language? Is that the first object-oriented programming language? Simula is the name of two simulation programming languages. Simula 1 and Simula 67. すごいね。Those objects influence Alan Kay's programming architecture, in which objects pass messages to each other. Oh. He coined the term object-oriented programming language in 1967. That's older than most of us here, or all of us here. This object-oriented programming has been here for like 33 plus 22, which is 55 years. 55 years, that's 5 elementary students. It's been a long time. Many competing definitions describe what OOP is. Some definitions will classify Rust as object-oriented, but other definitions will not. In this chapter, we explore certain characteristics that are commonly considered object-oriented and how those characteristics translate to idiomatic Rust. We'll then show you how to implement an object-oriented design pattern in Rust and discuss the trade-offs of doing so versus implementing a solution using some of the Rust strengths instead. So, reading the whole thing, we haven't decided whether Rust is object-oriented or not. But it certainly can be implemented in an object-oriented design. Oh, something happening in the chat? Guys, calm down. Calm down. Welcome back, Tommy. Hello. They should arrest me because my cuteness is dangerous. Okay? Okay? I hope they can resist it. Yeah, let's not talk about politics in the chat. Sorry, we don't talk about sensitive topics here. ごめんなさい. Node.js takes a lot from my computer. Does it take like a lot of memory to run? Surprise math lesson? What? You're going to be using 100 years old software libraries reading. Wait. What? It's how old is C language? There's no way it's gonna be 100 years old. How old is C language? It's developed in early 1970s by a computer scientist Dennis M. Michi at Bell's laboratory. It's not gonna be 100-year-old. It's only 55 years old. C is after the object-oriented programming has been published, so it can be object-oriented, right? C is not object-oriented. Slap on my face. What? Because C isn't object-oriented, therefore C++ came into existence in order to have OOP's features, and OOP is a programming language model organized around objects. So C is not object-oriented? Haha. Just programming offline. Gosh. Welcome, Jordan. Hello. Today the stream works well. Nice. The internet seems to like me recently. No takes 80 MB RAM running on a simple web browser. Oh gosh. It will be eventually probably in my lifetime. I don't want to touch a code that's 100 years old. People better fix it before I use it. If the world doesn't blow up and send us back to the dark ages, then I'll go jobless. If the world blows up, living see as ancient magic. So we all know some form of dark magic. If tomorrow all the computers stop working, they will replace the library with better ones. Better. They better do though. They better do so. See you, Batami. Bye. This procedural. C++ is multi-paradigm. Cyan, you finally can pronounce paradigm. Rust has features that could be considered OOP, but it doesn't aim for being an OO language. Cyan hates all things. I don't hate that much. 100 years is just a bit too much. I'm not going to eat a 100-year burger. AI can code the library. That'd be great. We have Copilot that's already kind of useful. We should do a stream on the Copilot and see what it does. It's gonna be fun. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Characteristic of object-oriented language. What characteristic do we have? On top of my head, polymorphism, encapsulation. What else? There are just some terms about object-oriented languages. You just hear it from everywhere. An inheritance. You're going to see daddy and the son and the children inherit some traits. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. There is no consensus in the programming community about what features of language must have to be considered object-oriented. Rust is influenced by many programming paradigms, including OOP. For example, we explore the features that came from functional programming in Chapter 13. Arguably, OOP languages share certain common characteristics, namely objects, encapsulation, and inheritance. Let's look at what each of those characteristics means and whether Rust supports it. Object contain data and behavior. I think the struct feels like object. The book Design Patterns Elements of Reusable Object-Oriented Software by Eric Gama, Richard Helm, Ralph Johnson, and John Willett, colloquially referred as the Gang of Four book, is a catalog of object-oriented design patterns. I think I have read some of it because I've heard of the Gang of Four design patterns. Maybe I have read it as like a assignment or something. It's published 20 years ago. I mean 30 years ago. 30 years ago. 欢迎维尼，记得吃早饭哦。I was wondering what Cyan thought about the old ball of yarn. What is a ball of yarn? 啥？冰爸说啥？毛线球？问号。Books are made to last, burgers not. Maybe McDonald's. Too much text. Oh, I feel reading is hard too. But I definitely have heard of this book when I studied C++ or something. Object-oriented programs are made up of objects. An object packages both data and the procedures that operate on that data. The procedures are typically called methods or operations. So an object is just data plus methods or operations. I think the method has operation. Using this definition, Rust is object-oriented. Structs and enums have data, and imply blocks provides methods on struct and enums. Even though structs and enums with methods aren't called objects, they provide the same functionality according to the GAN of 4 definition of objects. So structs and enum, even though they are not called objects, but they are objects according to definition. So there are objects in Rust. OP has a lot of issues, which is why people hate Java. What kind of issue OP has? One of the reasons that it is. What kind of issue? Yeah. Because I did heard of OP has a lot of issues. Encapsulation hides implementation details. Is that the one that is public and private? Another aspect commonly associated with OOP is the idea of encapsulation, which means that the implementation details of an object aren't accessible to the code using that object. So when you use an object, you don't need to know how it is implemented, and that's encapsulation. Therefore, the only way to interact with an object is through its public API. Code using the object shouldn't be able to reach into the object's internals and change data or behavior directly. This enables the programmer to change and refactor an object's internal without needing to change the code that uses the object. So we have like all the get and set, all the stuff. Hola, Shikar. Welcome. Hello. RT or FM is always good practice. What is RTFM? RTFM? Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I think people have told me about it a year ago. I need to make a meme of myself to remember what it means. Read the menu. Manual. Multiple inheritance. Why is multiple inheritance bad? Is multiple inheritance like the parents inherit from grandparents and the children inherit from the parent? Why is multiple inheritance bad? Java doesn't allow multiple inheritance. I think there are a few patterns, design patterns or something like that. Like singleton. Using concepts from functional programming language allow you to reuse more code and do less typing. Language like Java tend to be very verbose. It is pretty low. It's still snowing? Oh. Take care, Ice Cat. I think Kotlin does a good job at fixing the verbosity of Java. Is that a language from Google? A modern programming language that makes developer happier. Developed by JetBrains. Okay. It's not from Google. Is it? Is it from Google? I just somehow feel it has something to do with Google. It's for Android. Kotlin is a cross-platform statically typed general-purpose programming language with type inference. It's designed to interoperate fully with Java, and JVM version of Kotlin standard library depends on Java class library. So Google announced Kotlin language is preferred language for Android app developers. I have never put my hand into mobile development. I did a toy project once, and it was really slow running a demo app on my phone. I feel like it's like people doing VR or people doing mobile, they're like in their own field, you know. It's quite different from backend engineer. Or somebody prove me wrong, cause I don't know much. Multiple inheritance is when you have two immediate parents, and then if two fields or methods have the same name, it's ambiguous. Oh. So I have two immediate parents, and I don't know whose methods match to which method I have. Encapsulate the spam bots. We make them private. Kotlin is from JetBrains, yes. Which makes IntelliJ Google use Kotlin for Android. So it's very big for Android dev. I like Kotlin a lot. It can compile it to JavaScript. Really? Kotlin is one of the several takes on the idea of what if Java didn't suck. Wait. Kotlin can compile to Java directly? JavaScript? Did I say Java? It can compile to JavaScript. Nice. OOP languages can be resource intensive and require a lot of storage. Cyan phone app dev stream when I don't know. I thought of it, but I never knew. Like, if I make a app on the phone, what the hell is it gonna do? Like, wake you up at 4 AM every morning? Would you guys like that? Multiple inheritance is not a Java feature in any case. I do read that Java doesn't support multiple inheritance, right? Java. I don't think it supports. Multiple inheritance. It is not allowed. Welcome, Yufan. Hello. And did I say hi to you, Blackson? Welcome. Cold Clash versus Cyan. What is Cold Clash? What is Cold Clash? What is Cold Clash? Competitive computer science league. Nani? Kotlin can compile to native exe, JVM, JavaScript, WebAssembly, Android. Why is this so good? Does any other language do that? JavaScript is basically machine code for browser now, so every language is trying to target it. I made an app to remote control my PC. Lock the screen and stuff. Uses SSH. That's so cool. That's so cool. How did you do it? I've seen apps that allow you to use like a terminal. SSH into machines. How about wake me up when September ends? An application to wake you up when September ends. Honestly, what exactly does it mean? What? Like, why? What does it mean? How his father's death affected him when he was 10 years old. This is deep. We should have a GitHub repository to create a social network of Cyan fandom. Ditch the Discord group. No, don't ditch it yet. Also, from a security side, Java has tons of vulnerability to cross-site scripting and cross-site request forgery. They probably have fixed a lot of them. Use GitHub as social network. I heard it's a big social network. Is GitHub a social media for developers? An app that automatically adds neon to the end of every text you send. That's not going to look good if you're texting your mama or your papa. They're going to think something got into you. Most languages don't do multiple inheritance. C++ is the weird one. I guess C++ is flexible, you can do a lot of things and it just lets you break. Welcome, CoralFX. Hello. Hello. That's one game dev language means you compile to like everything. Hex. It sounds like hack. The cross-platform hit. Compiles to everything. So many things. Does it also compile to Flash? Unbelievable. Flash? Do people still use Flash? There's something called Neko. And the icon is a freaking tiger. It's not cute at all. That's not good. Welcome, I am TRNN. Hello. Welcome, the OX. The 0x539. Wait, if Rust have inheritance, it would be multiple inheritance? It has traits. But this is complex. GitHub doesn't have DMs? Man, I remember there's a dating app. You date with code. GitHub is a code. I know. I know, but people make friends on GitHub. I know. Stop telling me what GitHub is. GitHub is written and still maintained in Ruby. I find it pretty surprising because I don't feel a lot of companies use Ruby. I don't know what's the reason they want to use Ruby. The Neko icon is a bobcat. It looks like a tiger to me. It looks very scary. Oh yeah, we're not progressing through the book. Like, let's go. People are too talkative today. I'm really talkative. GitHub dating profile. I should get one. I should seriously get one. Oh my god. Objects contain data and behavior. Yes, we have done that. Now encapsulation. We're talking about what are we talking about? We are talking about using the object with its public API and not caring about how it is implemented. We use the pub keyword to decide which modules, types, functions, and methods in our code should be public, and by default, everything else is private. So we have a struct of averaged collection. I'll just write it really quickly. Why is it in the library? Anyways, public struct averaged collection. My typing speed is like a tiger, like a wind. Okay, so I have the struct. The struct is marked public, so article can use it, but the fields within the struct remain private, so those are private. And this is public. This is important in this case because we want to ensure that whenever a value is added or removed from the list, the average is also updated. We do this by implementing add, remove, and average method on the struct. Okay, and I think let me move this over to a library file. Library file. Ta-da. View. New file. Library.rs. Boing. Okay, and implement for average collection a add function that push value onto the list. Pop function. Actually, let me do update average first because it's gonna be used. GitHub is staking website for programmers and GitLab is actual repository. Is GitLab self-hosted? Average. Update average. It takes the self. We're going to mute the self. At total equals to self the list dot iter dot sum self dot average equals to total as float divided by self.list.length as float. Float divide by float. It's float. Okay, we have our update average, and we can have an add function. Oh, public function add. It takes a mutable of self. The value of integer. This is Visual Studio Code. I have never used Atom. I use Sublime. I use IntelliJ. People keep recommending me Atom. Oh. Push a value, and we need to update the average. IntelliJ is great for Rust, but really heavy. Ooh. What is NeoWim? Oh. Is it Vim? Why is it Neo? Remove mute self. Oh, on the remove, it also returns the thing we remove. That result equals to self dot as the pop. Just pops. Pop. And result. If the result has something, some value, then what happens? So then we update the average. If I were to write the code, I will totally forgot to update the average. And it returns the some value. And if there's nothing in the list, it'll return no. And here a public function here to it's to return your average. average. Float. Yeah, it doesn't even need a return statement. So we have the public APIs. We add something to a list and update average. Remove. We remove something from the list and return the element, or if the list is empty, return nothing. We return the average in average, and we do not make this public because we don't need other people to update the average for us. This average collection handles the average calculation automatically. We don't want people to mess with our data. It's okay. Every time we talk about what IDE to use, we get into argument. We talk about language, we get into argument. But those arguments are fun. Because once we talk about it, it's unavoidable. What is Moyavim? Hold on. Does Moyavim actually exist? Somebody should make a Moyavim. There's no Moyavim. Wait, there's a Moyavim mode. But that's not Moya. It's not about Moya. We should have a Moyavim, guys. Let's use pen and papers. Amazing. We're doing whiteboard interview right now. Right now, the pen and paper analog. What is analog? Hello, Lucifer. Welcome. Yep, I think I've explained all of those. Those are private, so the outside cannot access them. Because we have encapsulated implementation details of the average collection, we can easily change aspects such as data structure in the future. We can use hash set instead of a vector. As long as the signature of add, remove, and average stays the same, code using average collection will need to change. So encapsulation makes the code more reusable or easier to edit. Extensible? Flexible. Okay, talking about inheritance. What is inheritance? It is a mechanism an object can inherit from another object's definition, thus gaining the parent object's data and behavior without you having to define them again. Like animal and cat. Animal can make sound, and cat can implement make sound to meow. Thank you for the super chat, Warrior-san. Nice super. Arigato. Is the Streamlab alerting it? Thank you so much for your support. Nice. Oh, it's here. Nice. That delay though. It's a little. Hello, Warrior-san. Welcome. Inheritance. If a language must have inheritance to be an object-oriented language, then Rust is not wrong. What? I thought the trait is inheritance. There's no way to define a struct that inherits the parent struct's fields and method implementation. However, if you are used to having inheritance in your programming toolbox, you can use other solutions in Rust, depending on your reason for reaching for inheritance in the first place. So Rust doesn't have the typical inheritance. It cannot inherit the fields and methods. You choose inheritance for two main reasons. One is for the reuse of code. You can implement particular behavior for this one, and inheritance enables you to reuse the implementation for a different type. You can share Rust code using default trait method implementation instead, which you saw in the listing when we added a default implementation of summarize method in the summary trait. Wait, it's not even showing in here. Where is the listing? Any type implementing the summary trait will have the summarize method available without any further code. I think, is it in the chapter 10 somewhere? When we talk about traits. Here we go. Not this one. I think it's 10:14 right here. Right here. We specify a default string for summarize method. The article can use the summarize method. I kind of want to see the whole thing. There's a public trait summary, and we can implement a summary or a struct. And then this it gives the implementation for summarize author. Okay, going back. Any type implementing the summary trait will have the summarize method available on it without any further code. This is similar to a parent class having an implementation of a method, and the inheriting child can also have the implementation of the method. We can also override the default implementation of the summarize method when we implement the summary trait, which is similar to a child class overriding the implementation of a method inherited from a parent class. The other reason to use inheritance relates to a type system, to enable a child type to be used in the same places as the parent type. This is also called polymorphism, which means that you can substitute multiple objects for each other at runtime if they share certain characteristics. To enable a child type to be used in the same place as the parent type. To enable a child type to be used in the same place as a parent type. Oh. So can Rust do that? We can substitute multiple objects for each other at runtime. Can they do it through enum? Polymorphism. What is polymorphism? Like poly means multi. Morphism means change. Is it? Welcome, Hapnia, 欢迎. To many people, polymorphism is synonymous with inheritance, but it is actually a more general concept that refers to code that can work with data of multiple types. For inheritance, those types are generally subclasses. Rust instead uses generics to abstract over different possible types and trait bounds to impose constraints on what types must provide. This is sometimes called bounded parametric polymorphism. This is a long word. Bounded parametric polymorphism. Enon can do that and also trade objects. Polymorphism for me is how you implement a same method in different classes based on inheritance. How you implement a same method in different classes based on inheritance. Ways to adapt a same concept. Humans swim some way, fish swim other ways. Let me find how polymorphism is defined in other places. Something occurs in several different forms. You can access objects of different types through the same interface. Oh, so function overloading is a part of polymorphism in C++. Let's read on. Inheritance has recently fallen out of favor as a programming design solution in many programming languages because it's often at risk of sharing more code than necessary. Subclasses shouldn't always share all the characteristics of their parent class, but will do so with inheritance. This can make a program's design less flexible. It also introduced the possibility of calling methods on subclasses that don't make sense or cause errors because the methods don't apply to subclasses. In addition, some languages will only allow a subclass to inherit from one class, further restricting the flexibility of a program's design. For this reason, Rust takes a different approach. Use trait objects instead of inheritance. Okay. So Rust is like staying away from some inconvenience of inheritance. There are 4 pillars of OOP. Abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism. Oh. I feel like the object stuff is the abstractions. Encapsulation is the public and private. Inheritance is the parent and child. And we can call the same method on different objects is polymorphism. That makes sense. I do remember what you said. I've heard of that somewhere too. Okay, moving on. Welcome, Xia. Using trait objects that allow for values of different types. Okay, what are we doing? So vectors can only store elements of one type. And using enum, we can hold integers, floats, and text in one place. This means we could store different types of data in each cell and still have a vector that represented a row of cells. The vector all have the elements that spreadsheet cell. But spreadsheet cell can be integer, floats, and text. This is a perfectly good solution when our interchangeable items are a fixed set of types that we know when our code is compiled. However, sometimes we want our library user to be able to extend the set of types that are valid in a particular situation. To show how we might achieve this, we'll create an example GUI tool that iterates through some of the items, calling a draw method on each one to draw it to the screen. So we're trying to build a GUI tool and let some user to extend it. Calling a draw method on each one to draw it to the screen. Calling a draw method on each of the item to draw it on the screen. Okay? So use like circle.draw, rectangle.draw. A common technique for GUI tools. We'll create a library crate called GUI that contains the structure of a GUI library. This crate might include some types for people to use, such as button or text field. In addition, GUI users will want to create their own types that can be drawn. For instance, one programmer might add an image and another might add a select box. Okay. We won't implement a fully fledged GUI library, but we'll show how the pieces fit together. The GUI needs to keep track of many values of different types. It needs a draw method on each of these different type values. It doesn't need to know exactly what will happen when we call the draw method, just that the value will have that method available for us to call. To do this in a language with inheritance, we might define class name component that has a method named draw on it. In the other classes, such as button, image, select box, would inherit from component and thus inherit the draw method. They could each override the draw method to define their custom behavior, but the framework could treat all of the types as if they were component instances and call draw on them. But because Rust doesn't have inheritance, we need another way to structure the GUI library to allow the user to extend it with new types. Okay, so in other languages, it's pretty straightforward to define a class name component and have all the other elements inherit from component. But Rust doesn't have inheritance, so we need to use trait for common behavior. To implement the behavior we want GUI to have, we'll define a trait named draw that will have one method named draw. Then we can define a vector that takes a trait object. A trait object points to both an instance of a type implementing our specified trait as well as a table used to look up trait methods on that type at runtime. Wait, what? A trait object. It points to both an instance of a type implementing our specified trait, as well as a table used to look up trait method on that runtime. What is a table? We can create a trait object by specifying some sort of pointer, such as a reference or a box smart pointer. Then the thing keyword, and then specifying the relevant trait. We can use the trait objects in place of a generic or concrete type. Wherever we use a trait object, Rust type system will ensure at compile time that any value used in that context will implement the trait object's trait. Consequently, we don't need to know all the possible type at the runtime. Whenever we use a trait object, Rust type system will ensure at compile time that any value used in that context will implement the trait object's trait. Okay. So if it's a trait object, it must implement the trait. It's like in other languages, if the component has a method, you gotta implement the method. A V table, basically a list of the concrete function used for this particular trait object. The same with rows and columns is a table. I want to see how it looks like, but seems like it's just a pointer. It's a small pointer or a reference. Hi, thank you for coming, Tempa. Thank you for discussions. Thank you so much. I couldn't participate too much because myself is kind of limited on knowledge. Thank you for contributing, and thanks to everyone for discussing all the knowledges. Okay. We have mentioned that in Rust, we refrain from calling structs and enum objects to distinguish them from other language objects. Oh, so that's why I've never seen the word object in this book, because structs and enum are not quote-unquote objects, and Rust is not so object-oriented. In a struct or enum, the data in the struct fields and behavior in the implement blocks are separated. Whereas in other languages, the data and behavior combined into one concept is often labeled an object. Oh, in Rust, the implement and the struct itself, they are in two blocks. But in other languages, they're often grouped in a big scope, a big block. So it's like Rust is saying, hey, the behavior and the data are two different things. Oh. And the trait objects are called objects because they are more like objects. They combine data and behavior. But trait objects differ from traditional objects, because we can add data to a trait object. Trait objects aren't as generally useful as objects in other languages. Their specific purpose is to allow abstractions across common behavior. So it's just for abstractions. They are not real objects yet. Okay. So now we can define a trait named draw. Public trait draw. Function draw self. We have finally met the box named Neko. It's gonna come. Okay. Who are you? The trait object. Public struct screen. We have a struct of screen. Public components. Vector of box of thing draw. This vector is of type box thing draw, which is a trait object. This is a trait object. It's a standing for any type inside a box that implements the trait object. Implements the trait, the draw trait. So anything that implements the draw trait can be represented by a box. So basically anything, if I do a meow, anything that implements the meow is a cat. I'm a genius. And implement string public function wrong self for component in self the component iter component the draw. So it implements a wrong method. And for each of the components, it runs the draw function. This works differently from defining a struct that uses a generic type parameter with straight bounds. This works differently from defining a struct that uses generic type parameter with straight bounds. A generic type parameter can only be substituted with one concrete type at a time, whereas trait objects allow for multiple concrete types to fill in for the type object at runtime. So the trait objects allows for multiple concrete types to fill in for the trait objects at runtime. So if we define the screen with a generic type and a trait bound, we have vector of t and this restricts us to a screen instance that have a list of components of all type. List of components all of type button or all of type text field. If you only ever have homogeneous collections. Using generics and trait bonds is preferable because the definition will be monophorized at compile time to use concrete type. On the other hand, with the method using the trait objects, one screen instance can hold a vector t that contains a box button as well as a box text field. So this only allows t to be one thing. But if we use the trait object, it can be any type that implements the draw trait. Welcome, Satapi. I should be programming the Rust game. I've never played it. No. Rust is being used a lot of places. CSS parsing in Firefox, text searching VS Code, backend of Dropbox and Discord. Maybe it will be used for more and more places. To replace C++. Maybe? Okay, moving on. Implementing the trait. Now we add some types that implement the draw trait. We'll provide button type. Again, actually implementing the GUI library is beyond scope, so the draw method won't have any useful implementation. So where do I put it? I'll just put it here. A public struct of button. This button has bunch of field wells. Integer public height. Integer public label a string. And we're going to implement the draw trait for button and function draw self. And we're not going to implement it. So now we have a button. And someone using our library decides to implement a select box. Select box. We're using the draw trait, and somebody using our library create a select box and implement a draw. And they can now write in the main function to create a screen instance. To the screen instance, they can add a select box and a button by putting each in a box T to become a trait object. They can then call the run method on the screen instance, which will call the draw on each of the components. So what do we have? In the main function, we have an instance of a screen. And its component is a vector of boxes. So it has a select box with hide options. Yeah, I'm so lazy. I don't want to write. Okay, that's the first box. And then it has a second box of a button. Sexy belly button. Hide. Label. String from. Okay. Okay. Why are you upset about the button? It's not in the scope. Import. Expected select box fun button. Is it because the screen is not imported? Okay, now we import the screen and button. And the component can have elements of different types as long as they're in a box. Wow, the chat is moving on so quick. I don't know where to catch up. HTML and CSS? I just took it out from the resume. I was looking at the list of language I know, and I found, and in my other resume it has HTML and CSS. I stared at it, and I was like, wait, they're technically not programming language, right? So I just took it off of the list. I was like, I know a little bit of React, so people would assume I know HTML and CSS, right? Should I keep them on there, or should I take them off? Would you put HTML and CSS on your resume? What's async trait? The trait needs to synchronize? A crab can hold? Bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 bang. Anyways, I should switch it to technologies rather than languages. I'll just add framework. I know enough HTML to customize my space page. MySpace? I never had MySpace. Wait, what is MySpace? Is that previously Facebook? Previously Meta? What is MySpace? Hold on. There's a myface.com. Wait, but this is not MySpace. Why did MySpace shut down? Oh, so wait. MySpace is not Facebook? Okay, they were competitors. Anyways, I should write a MySpace trust. That would be so fun. I wanna know how it looks like. Oh my god. It looks so cool. Building a MySpace. Oh my gosh. I'll build a Meow Space. Meow Space is apparently already a company. MySpace is Asian social media, I know. I wouldn't put HTML and CSS on a language area. Yeah, I look at my own resume and I wonder, how did that got me a job? Why did I put those in the language? Even though I know you can. You can. Age exposing inquiry. You are leaving it off because you don't want to web dev. You don't make me feel this way. It's okay. We all know what MySpace is. I even know what MySpace is. You guys are safe here. Welcome, Dark Yum. Microsoft Asian Service. What is Microsoft Asian Service? Asian Service? What is that? Trade cannot be async. My brain cannot understand async right now. Lion should design her own VTuber specific social media site and app. I can, but why? I won't have many users. Nothing's keeping the borrow checker. All lifetimes are still there if you look at the macro expansion. I haven't been using the lifetime a lot. I don't feel like I'm coding in Rust. Just put React if you want to be a web dev. Okay. Okay. It's funny. Okay, so the screen. Let me run this and see if this works. Wait, oh! I'll go wrong. It kind of works. They're just warnings. It works. There's boxes. It works. The advantage of using trade objects and Rust type system to write code similar to code using duck typing is that we never have to check whether a value implements a particular method at runtime or worry about getting errors if a value doesn't implement a method, but we call anyway. Rust won't compile our code if the values don't implement traits. Okay. Oh, so it's doing an experiment. If something doesn't implement a trait. Oh, we use high on everything. If something don't implement a trait. I want the error message. Yeah, it's saying the trait bound drop is not satisfied. I think if I do screen go wrong, nothing will happen. Yep. It works. Cyan Onion. Why does it have a O? Cyan Onion website. What is an onion? I'm not the onion. Stop. Opening it to other VTuber while the idea of being a centralized, easy to access community grows too, while also growing your own brand by association. I thought about that, but I don't know. but I think it's a good idea. If you're applying for web dev, those are implied at that point on my resume. Yes. 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 Oh. You want to make a website that lets streamers stream copyrighted music? I thought about it too, but isn't copyrighted music still copyrighted? Anywhere? I don't know the details about the laws and stuff. You will link to a YouTube mirror of it and play it at a corresponding time span in the recording. Oh, that's a smart idea. Will you require a browser extension or something to have music page open in another tab? That's a smart idea. So the music has to be on YouTube though. You guys are also creative. That's really, really nice. Welcome Ad3-210. Hello. Onion website is a special website that can only be accessed from Tor and normal. Oh, I think I've heard of it. Wait. No. You guys are hackers. You guys are scary. Cyan in dark web. Yeah, bet. Okay, what is dynamic dispatch? It sounds like something that Magic Girl would say. Dynamic dispatchy, something like that. You know, they throw some arrows made out of heart and just pew. What is dynamic dispatch? Recall the performance of code using generics. Okay? The compiler generates non-generic implementation of the function and method for each concrete type that we use in place of generic type parameter. I don't understand a single sentence. Nani? Monomorphization? Monomorphization? The compiler generates non-generic implementations of functions and methods for each concrete type that we use in place of generic type parameter. Oh, basically it substitutes what our implementation into other stuff, so the compiler knows what the actual code is. I can't believe if what I said is right. I can't believe it's being expressed in a very long sentence. Monomorphization, when the compiler takes your generic function and copy paste it for each data type you use it with. Copy the code for each type and substitute each type. Oh, yeah. I wish it just says copy and paste. Monomorphism. Polymorphism. Monomorphism. Now it makes more sense. I was like, I'm becoming a cow. The code that results from monomorphization is doing static dispatch, which is when compiler knows what method you are calling at compile time. This is opposed to dynamic dispatchy, which is when compiler can tell at compile time which method you are calling. What? That's legal? In dynamic dispatch cases, the compiler emits code that at runtime will figure out which method to call. That sounds like absolutely dangerous. In dynamic dispatch cases, the compiler emits code that at compile time will figure out which method to call. So before compile time, it doesn't know what stuff to call. The name is ridiculous to read aloud. I made it ridiculous. It's fun. Bear with me, guys. It doesn't know what to call, but it knows how to find out. When we use trade bounds, Rust must use dynamic dispatch. The compiler doesn't know all the type that might be used with the code that's using straight objects, so it doesn't know which method implemented on which type to call. Instead, at runtime, Rust uses pointer inside the trait object to know which method to call. This is a runtime cost when the lookup happens. When this lookup happens, that doesn't occur with static dispatch. Dynamic dispatch also prevents the compiler from choosing to inline a method's code, which in turn prevents some optimizations. However, we did get extra flexibility in the code that we wrote, and we were able to support. So it's a trade-off to consider. Huh. So you find the exact. It does the lookup in the runtime, and it might be time consuming, and that's a trade-off. I don't like how he refers to the code segment as these numbers. It'll be great if it has like a, URL. I can just click and jump. That sounds like a great PR for this book, yeah? OP inheritance is all dynamic dispatch, by the way. Yeah, it is. There's a wonderful crate called enum dispatch that gives similar ergonomics to trade objects, but with an enum. Enum dispatch is super fast when you can get away with using it. It provides a set of macros that can be used to easily refactor dynamically dispatch trade accesses to improve their performance up to 10 times. Wow. There's so many crates. It feels useful. I'm looking at a website that is like super bright. I don't wanna show. It doesn't have a dark theme. Dang it. So instead of using box, you can use enum with implementer. and is faster. That's so cool. That's so cool. Nice too. Object safety is required for trait objects. We can only make object-safe traits into trait objects. Some complex rules govern all the properties that make a trait object safe, but in practice, only two rules are relevant. A trait is object safe if all the methods defined in the trait have the following properties. The return type isn't self. There are no generic type parameters. So in order to make trait objects, we need to make sure it's object safe. And to be object safe, the return type can be self. And there are no generic type parameters. The self keyword is an alias for the type we are implementing the trait or method on. Okay, it's the type. The trait objects must be type object safe because once you have used a trait object, Rust no longer knows the concrete type that's implementing that trait. If a trait method returns the concrete self, but the trait object forgets the exact type the self is, there's no way the method can use the original concrete type. The same is true if generic type parameters that are filled in with concrete type parameters when the trait is used. The concrete types become a part of the type that implements the trait. When the type is forgotten through the use of a trait object, there's no way to know what types to fill in the generic type parameter with. An example of a trait whose methods are not object safe is the standard library clone trait. The clone returns a self. The signature for the clone method in the clone trait looks like this. Okay? And it returns a self, so it probably cannot be used as a trait object like this. This is not okay. Clone cannot be made into a trait object. The string type implements the clone trait, and when we call the clone method on the instance of a string, we get back an instance of string. Similarly, if we call a clone on the instance of vector t, we get back an instance of vector t. The signature of clone needs to know what type will stand in for self, because that's the return type. The compiler will indicate when you are trying to do something that violates the rules of object safety. Okay, so it doesn't run. It doesn't run. This arrow means you cannot use this trait as trait object in this way. If you are interested in more details, there are places to go to. Okay. Last section. Implementing an object-oriented design pattern. So we're going to implement a blog post. A blog post. Looking scary. Looking scary. This state pattern. The state pattern is an object-oriented design pattern. The crux of the pattern. The crux. What is this word? Crux? The decisive or most important point at issue. Okay. Crux. It rhymes with bucks. Okay. Thank you, Ramanuj. Crux. Crux. The crux of the pattern is that a value has some internal state, which is represented by a set of state objects, and the value's behavior changes based on the internal state. The state objects share functionality. In Rust, of course, we use structs and traits rather than objects and inheritance. Each state object is responsible for its own behavior and for governing when it should change into another state. The value that holds a state object knows nothing about the different behavior of the states or when to transition between states. Using the state pattern means that when the business requirements of the program change, we won't need to change the code of the value holding the state or the code that used the value. We only need to update the code inside one of the state objects to change its rules or perhaps add more state object. I need to look at an example. It sounds like a cracks. This is Crucible. I don't understand. Fupa. Honestly, what is Fupa? What's happening to my messages? What happened to your messages? I'll implement a blog post in an incremental way. The final functionality will start a blog post as an empty draft. When the draft is done, a review of the post is requested. When the post is approved, it gets published. Only published blog posts return content to print. So unapproved posts can accidentally be published. So I guess the state is like initial state, and review, under review is another state, approved is another state, publish is another state, and print is another state, and unapproved is also some state. And any other changes attempted on a post should have no effect. For example, if we try to approve a draft blog post before we have requested a review, the post should remain an unpublished draft. Something goes lost in the ether. Ooh. Welcome, Magma Gaming 001. Hello. And what do we have? So in the main function, we want to have a post. We need to import it, but we haven't implemented it. But I'll write it anyways. Post.add text. I ate a salad for lunch today. Assert equal post.content. Post.request review. Oh, so the post content will be empty until the post is being approved. Approve. Assert equal I ate. post.content. Michael. Okay, so that's how we wanna use the post. So how do we write the post? We want to allow the user to create. Okay, we've known that. We want to enable a request and we will approve. So the post type will use the state pattern and will hold a value that will be one of the three states: draft, waiting for review, or published. Changing from one state to another will be managed within the post type. The states change in response to the method, but they don't have to manage the state changes directly. Defining a post and creating a new instance in the draft state. So, in here we have public struct post, and the post has a state. Ooh, this is our trait object. And content is string. The post will hold a trait object of box dynamic state inside of option T, and will implement a few functions. 你妈在说啥? A new post returns a post, and this post, oh, it just fills for you. It's some box new draft. And the content string new. Capital, hello, welcome. Wait. Like BTS. Did you say something and change your name? Because I think I saw your name. Welcome. Okay, there's a post. Like that. Like that. And then we're going to have a trait called state. We're going to have a struct called draft. We're going to implement state for post. For draft. For draft. Because draft is a post, I guess. The state trait defines behavior shared by different post states, and the draft, pending review, and publish states will all implement the state trait. We'll start by defining just the draft state because that's the state we want our post to start in. So we're going to have a draft, pending review, and publish that implement states. When we create a new post, we set the state build to sum that holds a box. The box 2 points to a new instance of the draft struct. This ensures whenever we create a new instance of post, it will start out as draft. Because state field of the post is private, there's no way to create a post in any other state. Oh. 没关系，老兵嘛，有广告也没关系。小英看到了删掉就好，不要紧张，不要紧张，没关系的。Storing the text of the post content. Storing the text of post content. Implement post. So we have a add text function. It takes self. What else should it take? It takes some text, some string slices. Self.content push string. It pushes the text into the content of the post. The add text method takes a multiple reference to self because we're changing the post instant that we're calling add text on. We then call the push string on the string of the content and pass the argument to add to the saved content. Okay. And what else? Why is the content empty? It's a placeholder indentation. Okay. Public function content self returns string slice. Oh. Requesting a review of the post changes is state. So we can do post dot under review request review. Wait. Yes. Public function request review. Mute self. So it's gonna change the state. What is this dot take? What does it do? Takes the value out of the option. It takes the value out of the state, which is this draft. And self.state equals to some s dot request review? What is this? Anyways, let's finish. So the state can be the trade as request review. And here the implementation request review. It's a pending review. We're creating so many objects. Draft pending review. What is call to action? Implement state for pending review. Function request review. It returns the self. A light bulb. Oh. It has extract module. Yeah? I feel like there's some shortcut for doing this. Okay, what exactly did we do? We give post a public method named request review. So post has a public method of request review that will take a mutual reference to self, and then we call an internal request review. On the current state of the post. And the second request review method consumes the current state and returns a new state. We've added the request review method to the state trait. All types that implement the state will now need to implement the request review method. Now, note that rather than having all this as the first parameter, we have the box. We have the small pointer as the parameter. This syntax means the method is only valid when we call on a box holding the type. The syntax takes the ownership of the box. Oh, I love my can. Validating the old state so the state value of the post can transform into a new state. The syntax takes ownership of this, invalidating the old state, so the state value of the post can transform into a new state. Welcome, Ransan. Hello. If you haven't written the methods yet, one of the options fills the meaning. Usually you just write a definition, implement trait for type, left the implementation body empty, then the light bulb will give the code action to fill the implementation for you. Nice. So if I do this, if I just delete this, 锵锵，哦，哎，锵锵 worked. いいね。Nice. Thank you, CrowdFX. We've added okay, we have that. The syntax takes the ownership of box, invalidating the old state so the state value of the post can transform into a new state. To consume the old state, the request review method needs to take ownership of the state value. To consume the old state, the request review method needs to take ownership of the state value. This is where the option in the state file of the post came in. Okay, wow. We call the take method to take the sum value out of the state file. We call the take method to take the sum value out of the state file and leave a none in space because Rust doesn't let us to have a unpopulated field in structs. This lets us move the state value out of the post. Rather than borrowing it, then we'll set the post state value to the result of this operation. We'll set... My mouse is running out of battery. This is not happening. Is it running out of battery or is it just connection issue? Let's hope it can survive the stream. Okay, we need to set the state to none temporarily rather than setting it directly with the code like this to get ownership of the state value. This ensures post can use the old state value after we have transformed it into a new state. Okay. I am killing mouse live on stream. That's totally what a cat would do. This is totally fitting into my character. The request review method on draft needs to return a new box instance of a new pending review struct, which represents the state when a post is waiting for a review. The pending review struct also implements the request review method, but doesn't do any transformations. Rather, it returns self because when we request a review on a post already in the pending review state, it should stay in the pending review state. Now we start seeing the advantage of state pattern. The request review method on post is the same no matter its state map, no matter its state value. Each state is responsible for its own rules. We'll leave the content method on post as is, returning an empty string slice. We can now have a post in the pending review state, as well as in the draft state, but we want the same behavior in the pending review state. Oh, so it now works up to here. Adding the approve method that changes the behavior of the content. So we are adding a approve method over here. Public function approve mute self. What does it gonna do? If let sum s equals to self dot state.take self.state equals to sum stop proof. And we need to implement a proof. So the state needs to be approved. It's the same signature as the request review. See you, Kejo. Thank you for coming. Learning about traits? Yes, object traits. Object-oriented stuff. Okay, we have a proof, a draft, and here we need to have a approved, approve, return self, and pending review, and in the pending review there's also a approve. Here we return box of new published, which is something we are going to create. Now a struct called published and implement state for publish. And now we can use the amazing light bulb to implement the implementations. A few. What have we done? We added the approve method to the state trait. We add an approve method to the state trait and add a new struct that implements the state, which is the published state. So we have our published and a implement state. Similar to request review, if we call approve method on a draft, it will have no effect because we will return self. We can call approve method on pending review, and then it will return a new boxed instance of published struct. The published struct implements the state trait. And for both the request review method and approve method, it returns self, because the post should stay published in those cases. So if something has been published, if you request review on them or approve them, it'll stay in the same state. What's the best way to fight rust? You're asking because we solved our roads here in Ohio. What's the best way to fight rust? You got to ask a chemistry PhD. Here we only code rust. We don't fight with it. The crabs are too tough. Welcome, Joshua. Now we need to update the content method on post. If the state is published, we want to return the value. We want to wait, what? Okay, so if the state is published, then we want to return the value in post content. Otherwise, we'll return empty string slice. Well, here unwrap content, and it's not okay. The goal is to keep all the rules inside the struct that implement the state. We call a content method on the value in state and pass the post instance as an argument. Then we return the value that is returned from using the content method on the state value. Stand still. What a great answer. Hello, Temples. We're almost done with it. We're writing a blog post, and it has some state. The goal is to keep all the rules inside the structs that implement state. We call a content method on the value state and pass the post instance as an argument. Then we return the value that is returned from using the content method on the state value. So you return the content on the state. We call the sref method on option because we want a reference to the value inside option. And because state is an option of box of dynamic state, when we call the sReference, this giant chunk is returned. We need to call it as a reference, and we unwrap it. The state will always contain a sum value when those methods are done. So now it's impossible, so we can just unwrap, and at this point, when we call content, the derived coercion will take effect on the reference and the box. The content method will ultimately be called on the type that implements the state trait. That means we need to add content to state trait definition. And that is where we'll put the logic for what content return depending on which state we have. Okay? So on the state, we need to have a content method with a lifetime. Fine. Okay. We have the content, we have the published. Here we have another content. We add a default implementation for content method that returns an empty string slice. We add a default implementation for the content method that returns empty string slice. That's the default implementation. And for the published one, we return the actual content. So when we call content, it will return empty when it's not published, and we will return the content when it is published. So looks like it goes. It compiled. It passes all the test case. Nice. That feels like tons. That felt like tons of work. The state pattern. Do we usually use the state pattern? Next step, MySpace. I'll do a meow space. Oh, that feels like a lot. Let's go to the summary. My brain is out of power today, and my mouse is like not wanting to connect. My mouse is dead. Wait, can you see my mouse at all? You can't see my mouse. Okay. Let's make a new language next. Yeah, you guys can make a Cyan land and make my icon. Put my head as the language icon. Make me the mascot. Okay. Today we'll learn about object-oriented features of Rust. We don't know if it's object-oriented language, but we know how to use trait to do some object-oriented stuff. Dynamic dispatch can give you code some flexibility in exchange for a bit runtime performance. You can use this flexibility to implement object-oriented patterns that can help your codes maintainability. Rust also has other features like ownership, object-oriented language, that object-oriented languages don't have. An object-oriented pattern won't always be the best way to take advantage of Rust strengths, but always a available option. With Emacs, you won't need a mouse, but I'm using Vim. I don't need a mouse either. Okay, we're going to start another fight in chat, which is great for ending the stream. Which is great for ending the stream. Thank you guys for watching. Tomorrow I'll be streaming some unsafe Rust. We're going to explore the unsafe side of Rust. And on Saturday we're going to have some Ozu stream if you are into rhythm gaming. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for teaching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night, and see you tomorrow at the same time. Bye bye. 拜拜，刺猬，乖儿子 ，Let's go. Bye you fun. Bye ice cat. 谢谢。Bye NJ. I'm so panicking. My mouse is not working. Bye Silent Zero. Bye Crowfax. Thank you, DOX539. Arthur. Thank you, Xia. Thank you, Kiwiki. Bye bye. See you next time. Bye bye, Black Sun. Bye bye.